What is up, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of BHR. This is Paul.
This is Patrick.
Hope everyone's doing all right this week. I think we're going to actually end up having this one out on time again, so that makes for 2 weeks running, but that's the calm before the storm.
Yeah, anything after this will not be on time.
It's actually possible that we might not actually be releasing anything for the next 2 weeks due to just different issues with timing and what we have going on. So I'm planning on a big move, and Patrick's going to be out of town this next week. So that's just causing a little bit of issues, but nothing too crazy. But we will be back after that, and it'll be under a slightly different format possibly. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll have to look into it and see what we do, but we might not be releasing on iTunes or... Well, YouTube. We can still do YouTube, maybe.
Yeah, we can still do YouTube, but it won't necessarily be the podcast format anymore. We might be transitioning more into a video podcast,
like a live streamish kind of thing. Yep.
But let's talk. First off, we'll stick with local news first. Come this next Tuesday, August 1st. There's going to be plenty of new laws taking effect into North Dakota, and actually the U.S. News did a report on it because it's quite a few laws. In every August 1st, like our new laws get passed through, but we have quite a few, and they're very big. Some of them are very big, some of them are a little bit different. The biggest one is the Second Amendment carry. Mm-hmm. So now, come August 1st. Every adult is going to be able to carry a concealed weapon, loaded.
I'm all for that. I know we kind of dove into it when it first passed. Mm-hmm. I guess I don't really have too much to add on that. I think with the shootings that we've tend to been having lately, I think there may be more stories of gunfire still, but not in the same respect as, a bad guy, going out and shooting at people. I think you're going to hear more stories of the bad guy getting shot.
Right. Well, and
people are going to start looking at us like they do Texas, where, you don't mess around there.
Yeah.
Everybody's got a gun.
I think that'll be overall, I think initially we'll see a slight bump in maybe some gun crime, and then we'll see a massive decrease in all types of violent crimes in North Dakota. At least that's what I hope, and I think that's what our state senate and state legislature, I think that's what they were going for. But yeah, that'll happen August 1st. So I fully intend to be packing heat, one in the chamber, ready to go.
As of right now, that will be tomorrow, as of when we're recording this.
Yep. Or as when this gets released.
Yes. Yep. Well, as we're recording this, it'll be out. Oh yeah, tomorrow's the 31st. Yep. Never mind.
Yep. But the one thing I would like to advise to if we have any people that are going to be carrying, most likely you are responsible, and just be aware, just like normal, be aware of your weapon and other people around you, and don't be drinking while you're carrying your gun. If you plan on drinking, you leave that at home.
I know too. When I took my concealed carry class a few years ago, they said that when you get pulled over, you're supposed to, let the police know and stuff. Is that still?
Oh yeah, I think you're supposed to immediately let them know that you are carrying a weapon.
Yep.
And I think around here, our police officers they're just like us, so I don't think they're gonna overreact or anything like that. So just make sure you notify the police officers if you do get pulled over that you do have a firearm on you, or either on your body or in your vehicle. They just want to be made aware of that. And then another thing that they are doing is, I think we talked about this as well, is the decrease in punishments for certain drugs. And I know first time possession charges are going to be dropped for basically just freeing up space in our prison system.
I don't have a problem with that. Certain drugs, maybe.
Right.
But I've already stated in the past that I think you just make all drugs legal anyway. Let people do what they're going to do. So to make a distinction between specific drugs would be ridiculous anyway.
Well,
so I think it's the right move, though.
I mean, the idea of, I don't know, maybe the one thing that I'm afraid of is having a government back, in a sense, almost encourage drug use, right? That's where it gets a little bit scary.
You think that this was encouraged?
No.
Okay.
No, but to decrease the crimes, right? It's not necessarily encouraging it, but it is a step in a way, in a sense, I always take any decision by a government and try to mentally snowball it, right? Like, so if this snowballs, right, I know that there's going to be a push this next year for making what's called safe havens for drug users. Mm-hmm. And so that'll be a place where drug users can go and use drugs. That'll be interesting. I don't think that will go over very well, because when you look at like data, or you take I watched a documentary where a guy was taking a tour of one of these safe havens in another state, and it's terrible. Like, basically what it's like is like a city park. Like, if you take the main park downtown here, Harmon Park, and filled it with drug users, and like everybody's just passed out there, and they have needle containers, but these people aren't responsible people.
Well, even non-drug using people aren't responsible enough to throw their trash away.
Right, yeah, exactly. And so you still have a bunch of needles everywhere all over in this area. And I mean, and to me, like, when the government creates a safe haven for drug users, that's where it becomes more of like an encouragement of drug using, right? Mm-hmm. Like, the government is saying, hey, it's okay, we'll take care of you. And that's where it gets a little bit scary for me.
I don't think there's anything wrong with having an area where it's safe to do it, but I don't like the idea of the government saying, oh, hey, we'll take care of you. Right. I think there should be a legal space to do so, just like there's a legal space to go drink booze.
Right.
But if you get in trouble, if you're at the bar and you start a fight, you're still responsible for your own actions.
Right. But see, and so since it's a state, so like bars and stuff like that, that's a private, right?
Right. That is the only comparison I could make.
Right. But having this place, I mean, like, it's a dangerous game. Like, but then again, I know that I've repeated myself many times. How does one go about stopping this rampant, epidemic of heroin in our country?
You can't.
Well,
people are going to do what they want to do, and as long as there's people there to do the drugs, people are going to bring the drugs in.
Yep. So it should be interesting with that stuff moving forward. Another thing that is going through and will be put into effect is, or might have actually already been put into effect, is the increase in punishment for rioting, and you're not allowed to participate in a protest with a mask on, and that's directly from the DAPL protests that we had. That's why they put those laws into effect.
I completely agree with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, if you are at a protest supporting something, you should not be afraid to show your face.
The only argument you could make here is they were protesting in the dead of winter, but at the same time,
I've heard some interesting conspiracy theories about that blizzard that hit DAPL. That so like right now they are using airplanes to, in a sense, bomb clouds to encourage rainfall. One of the conspiracy theories that I heard is that they did that to that winter storm that was moving towards DAPL, and just increased the water content of all the clouds to the point of where they could almost guarantee an insane blizzard was going to hit that area.
I mean, it's not like it would be beyond their capability to do so, but
it's an impressive. I mean, like, that wouldn't be so like that. See, to me, like, that wouldn't be like police officers. Police officers wouldn't have the access to that. Like,
no, it would have to be the government.
It would be bigger, yeah,
or even like military bigger.
Or but hang on, sorry about that. My phone just went off. Military or above. Federal, I would say like the national government level would have to actually make a decision like that. And then this kind of transitioning over to more national news. The really big thing this last week was the appeal of Obamacare. That, like, just the appeal, they refer to that as the skinny appeal, that was shut down. So, because of a few Republicans voting no. It wasn't just the big Republican that voted no was John McCain.
Yeah, and they made a big deal out of that because, like, just after his brain cancer stuff, there's the whole thing, is he even going to be able to vote and all that stuff.
I was kind of surprised to see him up and running. I mean, he did just have brain cancer, and he's already back in the Senate, and he makes his vote, and he decided to vote no on the skinny healthcare repeal. So I think, whatever. If that's what he feels is best for the country, then so be it. I mean, he doesn't necessarily have to follow political lines or the party lines, you know?
No, and I think we need to see more of that. I think we need to see politicians worrying more about what they believe versus
What the party
believes.
Yep. And, you know, like, kind of transitioning from that. Well, I mean, no, let's not transition too much from that, because we still want to talk about the healthcare, like the repeal of Obamacare. I know we were talking a little bit before the podcast or before recording this, but I, for one, I don't think a straight repeal right now would be a good idea.
I just don't see the issue. We didn't have an act or, you know, a plan in place before Obamacare, and I personally felt like my insurance was better before that.
Right. Yeah. And I'm sure, like, in a certain scenario, like, yeah, it was better before Obamacare kind of took effect. But, like, that's the one part with our government, is once they get their hands or their fingers in the mix of things, like, to take it out could cause a lot of stability issues, right? Like, with the markets, with the insurance companies and everything else. So that's the only reason why I think we should be a little bit more hesitant in just doing a straight repeal of it. We need to, if we are going to exit the healthcare field and supplying certain citizens with healthcare, then we need to make a slow withdrawal from that. Just like how we did in certain wars. Like, you don't just pull all of your troops out. You slowly remove them. So that's the main reason why I'm kind of thinking that it was probably a good idea that we didn't do the straight repeal of Obamacare this week. But I think I called it. I think I called that was going to be one of the main topics of the week. So
yeah, well, and that was almost like a last minute kind of thing, because that happened on Friday.
Mm-hmm.
No, Thursday night.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Things are going so crazy in our government. Like, it's almost hard. It's becoming more and more difficult to keep up with everything, you know?
Right. Well, and it seems like anything Trump does doesn't really get passed anyway.
Right. Well, so that's one thing that I really wanted to talk about, is the Trump presidency, right? So I still believe that Trump, in a certain case, like, he actually still is the better candidate. Like, absolutely. Like, in my opinion now, would I still vote for Trump over Hillary Clinton if those were my only two options? Yes, I would still do that. I think what happened, though, is that he has surrounded himself with people that are not exactly good.
Well, no, and he just fired, what was it,
Well, last week he fired the communications director.
And now just this week he fired somebody too.
Yeah. And then there's a lot of talk of him...
Chief of staff, I think it was.
Then there's a lot of talk of him possibly firing Jeff Sessions, the attorney general that recused himself from the Russia investigation.
Well, I'm about to make an argument here that there's a lot of turnaround in the Trump administration, but I would not have any problem with Jeff Sessions being let go.
Right.
I would also love to see the Secretary of Education let go.
Right. Well, and that's why I think, like, he might have just picked a really bad team. And historically, there has been presidents where it's like, oh, he's going to be a good president, and he picks these people, and they're just terrible people to have around the president. Like, they're not actually helping matters, right? And that's the way I feel about what's his name? Was it who was the
Spicer?
Yeah,
Spicer.
That's how I felt about Spicer. Is that basically that guy would throw fuel on any fire, right? Like, Trump would say something, and Spicer wouldn't make it better. He would, like, things would get worse. It seemed like.
I still, for now, I still feel like I like Spicer better than Scaramucci.
Oh yeah. Well, Scaramucci, I just don't think he should be trusted at all.
What has it been? Maybe a week, and he's already digging himself into a hole.
Yep. Yeah.
Talking about leaks and
just terrible. Yeah.
Tweeting at somebody that
there was something where he accused something of being leaks, but then he actually was the one that told people about the information. So I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a very confusing mess, and this kind of goes back to what I was saying, where, like, I think President Trump is picking really bad people to have around him.
I think it's just friends and people he made deals with beforehand, and it's not working out well for him.
Well, and I know that's kind of how it works with politics as well. Like, you just kind of make deals, but, like, going out, like, we went out of the political pool for the president, and in a sense, is kind of is what comes along with doing that, is that you get a lot of these other people that he puts into office that are not necessarily part of the political pool. For example, Scaramucci, like he actually campaigned against President Trump, but then swapped over to Trump's side once he became president, and now is all is forgiven. But yet again, it's another person that's throwing more fuel on the fire, and I think we need to get someone like. Do you know who the only person that like hasn't been in the news a lot lately? Mike Pence. Mike Pence has just been flying under the radar, smooth sailing the whole way. A few little hiccups at like a theater and whatnot, but he himself hasn't been the one putting fuel on the fire. I think he's just kind of sitting in the passenger seat and he's along for the ride.
Well, even during the election, he did that. I remember there was even a statement that came out where, Trump said that he didn't really like Pence, but he was, he actually made a good choice for a vice president.
Yeah, and it seemed like whenever they were doing interviews with the two of them, Trump would say something and it'd be very out there, and Mike Pence played like the advocate, the devil's advocate, and like for every bit of fire Trump was trying to put out on, or every bit of fuel Trump was trying to fuel the flames with, Mike Pence was like playing the opposite. He was trying to calm everybody down and bring things a little bit back to reality. And I don't know. It's good to see that there's at least one person that's kind of playing things calm in the White House. And I think our president should probably be asking Pence a little bit more on like his opinion on things, right? Like I think there should be.
Well, and we don't know that he's not. I mean, obviously they work with each other every day.
I don't think he's asking Pence on any of it. I think if our president went up to Mike Pence and he's like, "Hey, do you think I should hire Scaramucci?" Mike would probably be like, "Go for it, sure." Like it kind of like that friend where it's like, "Oh, you're making a really bad decision, but I gotta let you do this." Like,
yeah,
I think that's what Mike Pence is doing now. The big thing though this last week was the transgenders in the military, because Trump went through and said that transgenders are not allowed in the military.
I feel like it came out of nowhere.
Yeah, I would agree.
I never even realized that it was an issue. Mm-hmm. But now that it's come out, and I mean, I pretty much decided right away that I agreed with it. Mm-hmm. But especially now that it's been like almost a week now, and had time to look into more facts, I'm still on board with it.
Right. Well,
I do want to clarify, I have no issues with anybody being transgender, and to an extent, I do believe that just because you're transgender doesn't mean you're not capable of serving.
Right.
But I think there are some issues that go with some of it that are causing more issues in the military than people realize.
Mm-hmm. Well, and in my opinion, right, all of the people in the military should be capable of being on the front line, whether you are in that position or not, whether you're in the office, IT, any of that. You still go through basic training. You still go through marksmanship. Like, they still may need you to be out on the front line and away from normal civilization. And under those circumstances, under that scenario, you cannot have you cannot have people that are dependent on medications for specifically their hormones, which causes a lot of fluctuations in moods if they don't have those. And so what you could end up, like the end result there, if you had a lot, or even if you had one, two, just a few transgenders in a unit, right? They would be under an extreme emotional stress during that time period where it's already a very stressful period. So how would they react, right?
Well, and I do realize that not all transgender people go through, the transition, like the full transition. And I think that there should be that distinction made, that if you're not doing hormone therapy or you're not doing the surgery, there's nothing that would hinder you serving, and that you would do to hinder the process.
Yeah.
But I think that they're all getting blanketed together because it's just too hard to be like, you can't go up to someone and ask them like, well, do you plan on changing your genitalia in the future? It's something you can't do. So the easiest way to do it is just say, sorry, none of this group can join.
Right, exactly. And as long as, well, and I feel like as long as they can pass the mental health examination, you can pass the health exam, basic training, all of that, then yeah, sure, go for it. Then that's that. Like, but the part I really get a kick out of for the like with this whole thing is how heated it actually got. People that really never vocalized their support, or they did, but in different topics, right? Like they all of a sudden become very active on, the military and what has been going on, and it's like,
Here's the thing. We can debate about it all day, and we could talk about it. There's nothing wrong with that.
yeah,
But civilians should have no say in what goes on in the military.
no. Well, I don't know if they should have. No
I'm talking
say,
about
but,
in like the training process, their day-to-day operations.
Right.
That is something that we should have nothing to do with.
No. No, it's still one of the things that kind of irks me is that there actually is different qualifications for becoming a soldier between men and women. Like that, even between the sexes, there's a difference there. And it's like, I feel like a soldier, this kind of goes back to like that whole transgender thing. A soldier is someone, in my eyes, without a sex. If they can pass all of the things, if they can pass all of the training necessary, and it's all the same standard, then you can become a soldier, right? And then you can decide whether you're going into IT or being a desk jockey or whatever. So, like, that's the way I look at it. Like, the fact that there is actually different physical requirements for men and women, that still kind of baffles me. Like, as far as, like, if you're out, like, well...
because both sides are going to be doing the same exact things. Mm-hmm. There's no reason that you shouldn't have the same standards.
Well, and, like, that's what I want. I want for everybody to be doing the exact same things. But the reality of it is that women are not actually being put on the front line. They still don't. They don't get put on the front line necessarily. Which is, like, when you want to talk about, like, equality and everything, it's like, well, fine, let's talk about equality. But then women will have to be signing up for the draft when they turn 18. Women will have to be passing the exact same physical requirements as men, right?
My argument there would be is if they're not being held to the same standards, they don't belong on the front line.
Right. No, exactly. Yeah, that's true. That is a good thing, because then if you allowed that, because there was a big argument, I think within the last year or two, where women were trying to be put on the front line, and it's like, well, you have to pass. I agree. I'm in full agreement with you. If you're incapable of passing the same qualifications as the other soldiers on the front line, then you yourself should not be allowed up there, because then what you are a burden. You are putting other people's lives in jeopardy. If you're not capable of lifting your fellow soldier, who could be anywhere from 180 to 220 pounds on your back, and carrying them back some distance, then yeah, you should not be anywhere near that type of possible scenario.
Well, and I've never been in the military, so I don't know, what it's like with all these things going on. But I know I've seen, there's an article that I shared on Facebook where a female that was in the military was talking about having to do sensitivity training because there was transgenders in her battalion. I don't think that should be a thing. I think that they should be there, and you need to deal with it. Your own personal prejudices should not be present when you're there.
Yeah. Well, and I just still think it's kind of interesting, like, when you do little mini flashbacks to our military and, like, the old days, right? So in the old days, like, your drill sergeant, I know they don't like to be called that anymore. There's another name for him. But drill instructor. Your drill instructor would basically beat the shit out of you. They would tear you down. They would basically, like, you yourself, your identity would go off into oblivion, and they would recreate you as a soldier. I mean,
yeah, in a more raw kind of way of saying it, they brainwash you.
Mm-hmm. In a sense, yeah. But it's for the betterment of you as a soldier, right? Like,
absolutely, because you need to be trained to almost act without thinking in certain aspects.
Right, exactly. And then, like, that idea of sensitivity training, when you kind of consider that nowadays, right? That it is good to be aware of what other people are thinking and, like, be mindful of other people's feelings, but how is that actually a helpful thing when it comes to being in a firefight.
Yeah, I'm sorry. When you're in the middle of this desert getting shot at, your feelings mean nothing.
Right. Yeah, like, I'm going to say whatever I want to say. If I was put into that scenario, I'm going to care less about the sensitivity training and say whatever I want.
No, when you're putting your life on the line, there's no room for identity politics and things like that.
Yeah. And the fact that that is actually a topic is just, I mean, it's just so weird. Like
the fact that we're even having this conversation is why I agree with transgenders not being allowed, because after seeing the way people reacted to this and seeing how, everybody's opinions on the matter, they're not thinking about the military. They're just thinking of...
They think it's exactly
it's the same as your day-to-day life, and they're not the same thing.
No. Well, and that was a big deal prior to 9/11. I remember when the soldiers that signed up for the military prior to that, they had no idea that we were going to be going into this really big war, right? Mm-hmm. Like 9/11 kind of spawned and dominoed into multiple wars, and there was a lot of hubbub. Like, a lot of the people in the military were upset, and it's like, well, that is what the main purpose of the military is, there to fight. Like, that is what they're designed to do. Like, their purpose is to defend our country, but that's wherever we see fit. So that means that they need to be prepared to fight wherever and whenever. The fact that when you signed up in the military and it was a peacetime is irrelevant. I mean, you signed up for the military. Mm-hmm. So, like, you should have that mental awareness, that the capacity to understand that you could be called to war at any given moment. And the fact that, like, the people were upset during that, it still baffles me. And I feel like our society has just snowballed since then. And I think it's just going to continue on going. Like, where are we going to be 20 years from now? What is our society going to be made up of?
Yeah.
And not only that, though, but the world events in between. What is the next watershed moment? Because 9/11 was a watershed moment, and I think that we have another one coming up again. Because I believe our population might be overly sensitive right now, and we are very ignorant to a lot of reality. And when I say we, like, I'm right there with them, right? We all are. When we read a Newsweek article about cities in China having amazing pollution control, that's misinformation. When we read all of these different articles, like, there is bias. There are people out there that are trying to, dismantle certain aspects of the American life, and that's been going on for many years, and it's going to continue on. And I think now we're starting to see the success of that, right? Like, the changes that we're seeing now, I don't know if they are for the society's greater good, and that's where I'm very, very concerned.
And I mean, until more of it kind of happens, there's not really much we're going to know,
right?
Until we're in the middle of it, and probably going to look at stuff and go, well, maybe we should have stopped this sooner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it's hard to, get a jump on some ideas and things like that, because when they're small, you look like you're being paranoid. Mm-hmm. But then when they grow out of hand, you're like, oh, we could have nipped this in the butt quicker.
Right. Yep. And I know, like, it's where is it going to lead? And I mean, like, mainly it's our generation, right? Like, we are the next generation to really start to take control of this country. There is Generation X, and they're more so already there. Mm-hmm. They're gaining more people in the Senate and more people in our Congress, but we are up next. We are on we're the pitcher warming up, basically. Mm-hmm. And I'm very leery, and I hope that our generation, as time goes on, that we mature in a way where we're not as sensitive, right? Which is so weird, because we grew up with the internet, which is supposedly supposed to desensitize us to everything.
But even at the same time, you have people that use the internet on a day-to-day basis and still can't comprehend, the dark side of it.
Yeah, that is true.
You have a lot of citizens that want to try and censor the internet to an extent. Mm-hmm. Things that people say to them. I don't know. I think it's messed up that you can say things to people without any accountability on the internet, but at the same time, almost every website, anything like that, has a way to block or stop people from contacting you.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know.
Like, and it's kind of the same thing. Like the one thing that I always try and do, and I think you've even witnessed me when we're kind of getting ready for our podcasts, I always try to gather some news information from all of the different news sites because they are very politically biased, and I don't necessarily agree with all of the stuff that I see, but I still put myself out there and I expose myself to things I necessarily don't agree with. I'll read articles that I absolutely hate reading.
That's a big problem anymore, is a lot of people don't do that. They see what they want to see and they don't look any further than
right. That. We're putting our generation, we are putting ourselves in a bubble, right? We are surrounding ourselves by what we want to agree with, and anything else that we don't agree with, we shove off. We block communication. We kick them off of our friends list. We're incapable of actually getting along with people that we disagree with. It just is showing you I think it's showing the inevitable collapse of parts of our society, and like the fact that we talked about it again last week. I think the guy that went nuts and shot the Republicans at the baseball game. I think that is just the beginning. Though those are the signs of what's going to snowball.
You and I have talked about this personally quite a bit about like the Weather Underground. Mm-hmm. Do you think that we'll just see kind of a similar movement to that, and then it'll just kind of die off after a while?
I think it'll be
because to an extent we are seeing some of that, but mm-hmm. they're more open about the group that's doing it,
right? And I think that exactly. I think we'll see a domestic terrorist group form, and they'll cause enough chaos inside of our country that it's going to shove a lot of more people to a conservative side of things, right? Because I think that this domestic terrorist group is going to be of the liberal side, or the liberal or anarchists, whichever one. And they're going to force people into becoming more of the conservative mm-hmm. over time, which sucks that that's even necessary. But they're going to try and dismantle our government, and what's going to happen is that the government is going to gain strength.
Well, and that's what happens anytime there's violence on a large scale like that done by the citizens. Mm-hmm. The government takes more control, and they usually don't let it go when things are handled.
Exactly. Yep. I mean, it's been interesting doing this almost every week that we have, because it has exposed me to a lot of different political aspects, right? Like in different things out there. I try to read as much, and I've tried to become active. I've been hermiting from social media lately, but prior to that, I was very active on social media and encouraging the conversation and arguing my points. And some of the reactions that I've received, and I know that you've received, it's outstanding how how incapable of actually arguing a logical point is for a lot of our generation. And that's a big issue with me, is like, if you need to look at, when it comes to government aspects, in a logical sense, and like not an emotional sense, right? Because the more you look at, the government is not a person. It is ran by an assembly of people. It's supposed to be ran by the people of the country. When you try to add emotion into that, you have so many different emotions that break off into so many different aspects, right? Like different issues, right? Abortion is a prime example of one. People get very emotional on both sides. Mm-hmm. So if you look at it from an emotional standpoint, emotional perspective, it's going to be total chaos. But if our generation, if the people that are analyzing and wanting to debate these things look at it from a logical point of view, then they can come to the table and look at the true pros and cons with emotion being removed from that, and come to a clear decision, and what I believe will most likely be the right decision.
Well, and that's the thing, is what I see a lot of is the emotional response. There's no problem with not wanting to give in to my argument, but when you can't provide an argument to counter my argument, that's where I have problems.
Yeah.
I love a healthy debate. Mm-hmm. I like to argue. It brings out more information in the right conditions, Right. It becomes easier to understand where the other side's coming from. And I've always kind of struggled with myself. Before we did this, I was always kind of a middleman on everything because I could always see both sides. Mm-hmm. And, around the time we started doing this podcast, I actually started informing hard opinions on topics that I never really cared about.
Right. And then when you do form those hard opinions and you have someone try to counter yours, it's a very unusual type of thing to have happen, especially when they don't bring. To me, logic is the pinnacle of a debate.
Even though I do have my hard opinions on things, I could still be swayed one way or the other, but I almost get defensive when I start getting questioned, and immediately I want to prove my point as hard as I can. Even it's weird.
The big thing that I notice is the group mentality of certain people, right? When instead of actually trying to counter your logic with their logic and bring forth a solid argument, what they'll do is they'll try to basically get a group of people to shame you into silence, right? And that's like a big thing right now. Like you can even go back to the banning of certain individuals from UC Berkeley. Instead of actually having a solid counter argument, they ban them, they silence them. And it's just a pattern that I'm seeing occur on a micro scale as well as the macro scale. And that's where things become very dangerous, when it's like, instead of actually arguing with you, I just want to silence you. That's instead of actually trying to think through my standpoint, I just want to stop yours.
You're stopping the flow of ideas. Mm-hmm. We can never grow as a society if one side's ideas are being suppressed. Whether they are right or wrong, you need to be able to hear both sides and form your own opinions.
Right. I mean, consider our education of racism in the United States, right? Mm-hmm. We got to hear some of the worst things that we learned. At least I did. I learned about the Ku Klux Klan when I was younger, and hearing about what they did, their actions, the words that they speak, even like in the modern times, the modern Ku Klux Klan, and the things that they say. It's like these people are terrible people. When you learn about the Nazis and what they believed in, right? Like, you don't get conditioned to be a Nazi. You don't get conditioned to be a member of the Ku Klux Klan by hearing their rhetoric. You form your own opinion, and you're like, and I believe for the most part, it's like, oh wow, like, yeah, these people are terrible, terrible people. So if an opinion is really as bad as what people are thinking it is, they shouldn't be silencing it. They should be allowing it to be spoken. Because then if it actually is as bad as what they're saying, society will acknowledge how terrible it is, right? The issue arises is when it's not a bad idea. When somebody disagrees with you and it's not a bad idea, it's not everybody else that needs to change, it's you, right?
Well, it's almost like they call it the progressive left. Mm-hmm. It's almost like they've taken on the ideology of being a religion.
Yep.
And it's blasphemous to have opinions other than, the common belief or the core belief, and to question it is, I don't know. It's just weird.
To me, it's scary, right? Because when you when you look back through history, and the more passionate people become on their political agendas, and that they start to worship their own political ideologies, and they cocoon themselves inside of their own little world, right? When they only read the news that they agree with, when they only hang out with people that will agree with them politically. This is where rifts start to form in societies, in civilizations. And so, I mean, farther off into the future, like, this is not, we need to cure this now, because this disease will destroy our country if it continues to grow. And I think, like I said, I always try to analyze it as a snowballing effect. And as this snowballs, as people become more political, we're going to see more and more violence inside of our own neighborhoods. And that's what I really want to avoid.
And to say, I feel like in our area we'll probably be a little safer because it is a conservative area.
Yeah.
So I don't think we'll see too many issues with clashing between the ideas. But I think in the states where they have, a core big city that's more liberal ideas, but then the rest of the state's conservative, you're going to see a lot of issues.
Well, and ideally, so with me in furthering my education, I want to go to big cities and express my own ideas, right? And not be concerned about being surrounded by liberals and losing my job because I said something that they disagreed with. And I feel like the same should be for those people, vice versa, right? Like the liberals that are surrounded by conservatives should not be living in fear for losing their job because of expressing their idea. But if you express your idea and you have a solid counter argument made against it, you have to be susceptible to changing your ideas, at least in a slight, small way. And that's kind of been the whole point of this podcast.
We would love to see you guys, tell us your opinions, whether you agree with us, whether you disagree with us.
Right.
We're not going to be upset if you don't agree with the things we're saying.
Right. Just make sure that you make a solid counter argument.
Yeah. Make a solid counter argument. Start a conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yep. But I think that will wrap up this episode. What episode is this now?
This is 19, but technically 20 if you count our teaser episode.
Right, yep. So I appreciate everyone listening. This has been another great week, and make sure that you contact us. We might be taking a short little break, but we'll still try to be active with you. So.
And like I said last week, this will be my weekly reminder. Please take the time to educate yourselves on the net neutrality.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.